Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer sailing under the auspices of the Spanish crown, embarked on a series of historic voyages in the late 15th century that forever altered the course of world history. These voyages, undertaken with the aim of finding a westward route to Asia, ultimately led to the discovery of the Americas and the initiation of European exploration and colonization of the New World. Columbus was born in Italy around 1451, and from an early age he demonstrated a keen interest in navigation and exploration. Inspired by tales of Marco Polo and the desire to reach the lucrative markets of Asia, Columbus conceived the audacious plan of sailing westward across the Atlantic Ocean to reach the riches of the East. In 1492, after years of lobbying various European monarchs for support, Columbus secured funding from King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain for this ambitious venture. On August 3, 1492, Columbus set sail from the Spanish port of Palos with three ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. After a perilous journey lasting over 2 months, Columbus and his crew made landfall in the Bahamas on October 12, 1492, believing that they reached the East Indies. Columbus' first voyage marked the beginning of a new era of transatlantic exploration and contact between the Old World and the New World. His subsequent voyages in 1493, 1498, and 1502 further expanded European knowledge of the Americas and laid the groundwork for the Spanish colonization of the Caribbean, Central America, and South America.
Christopher Columbus embarked on his voyages with several objectives in mind, primarily driven by the desire for exploration, trade, and expansion of European influence. Some of the main objectives were: find a new trade route to Asia. Columbus aimed to find a westward route to Asia by passing the Ottoman Empire's control of Eastern Mediterranean and overland Silk Road routes. He hoped to establish direct trade with the lucrative markets of Asia, particularly for spices, silks, and other luxury goods. Spreads Christianity. One of the Columbus's personal motivation was to spread Christianity to new lands. He believed that his voyages would provide an opportunity to convert indigenous people to Christianity and bring them under the influence of European culture and civilization. Acquire wealth and prestige. Columbus sought personal wealth and fame. He hoped to discover new lands and resources that would bring him riches and elevate his status in the eyes of Spanish monarchs King Ferdinand and Queen Elizabeth, who sponsored his expeditions. Expand Spanish influence. Columbus aimed to expand the Spanish Empire's influence and territory. He sought to claim new territories for Spain, thereby increasing the nation's power and prestige in competition with other European powers. Finding gold and natural resources. Columbus believed that the lands he discovered would be rich in gold, silver, and other valuable resources. He hoped to exploit these resources for the benefit of Spain and himself. Establish new colonies. Columbus intended to establish permanent colonies in the newly discovered lands. These colonies would serve as bases for further exploration, trade, and conquest, as well as for spreading Christianity and European culture. Overall, Columbus' voyages were driven by a mix of economic, religious, and imperialistic motives, reflecting the complex motivations for European exploration during the Age of Discovery. Christopher Columbus's diary and letters are indeed considered primary sources for understanding his voyages and encounters in America. These documents provide first-hand accounts of his experiences, observations, and interactions during his expeditions to the New World. Christopher Columbus's first voyage lasted from August 3, 1492 to March 15, 1493. He sailed from Spain with three huge ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina, aiming to find a westward route to Asia. Instead, he stumbled upon the Americas. Exaggeration of discoveries. Columbus frequently exaggerated the extent of his discoveries to attract more funding and support from his patrons, particularly the Spanish monarchy. He described the lands he has encountered in the Caribbean are more opulent and promising than they actually were leading to inflated expectations among European investors and settlers. Selective reporting. Columbus selectively reported information to emphasize the potential wealth and resources of the newly discovered land while downplaying or omitting negative aspects.
Columbus' voyage was made possible by the financial backing of king and queen. They provided funding for the expedition, including the provision of ships, crew, supplies, and equipment. The Spanish monarchs saw Columbus' voyage as an opportunity to expand their influence, gain access to new trade routes, and spread Christianity to distant lands. They also hoped to challenge the dominance of rival European powers such as Portugal and the lucrative spice trade of East Indies. Columbus' primary motivation for exploration was to find a westward sea route to Asia, particularly the rich spice markets of East Indies. He believed that such a route would bypass the overland trade routes controlled by Muslim powers and provide a shortcut for European traders. Additionally, Columbus was driven by a desire for personal glory, wealth, and recognition. He hoped to secure fame and fortune by discovering new lands, claiming territories for Spain, and establishing trade networks with indigenous peoples. During his first voyage, Columbus did not establish permanent settlements in the Americas. However, he claimed the islands he encountered for Spain and erected crosses and banners to mark Spanish sovereignty. On his return journey to Spain, Columbus left behind a small contingent of crew members on the island of Hispaniola, promising to return with additional supplies and reinforcements. This led to the groundwork for future Spanish colonization efforts in the Caribbean.
Columbus' second voyage. When Columbus returned from first voyage, he received a warm welcome by the Spain monarch. In Columbus' life is a sharp change taken place in his life. There is not in his history a super contrast in one more dramatic than that between the first voyage of Columbus and the second. In first voyage, three little ships left the port of Palos, most of the men of their crew unwilling to going for adventure. After difficult in preparation and the in mindset of fear of all who stayed behind. In the second voyage, a fleet equipped with all the royal services could command, crowded with eager adventurers who are excited by the expectation of romance and of success, goes on very same adventure. In the first voyage, Columbus has but just turned the corner after a struggle and failure of 8 years. He is the penniless adventurer who staked all his reputation on the scheme in which he has hardly any sport. In the second case, Columbus is the Governor General. A letter is received from Barcelona when he came from his first voyage. The letter bearing instruction for him to proceed to Barcelona was addressed to Don Christopher Columbus, our admiral of the Ocean Sea, viceroy and governor of the island discovered in the Indies. So far, he now raised above the rank of poor adventurer who had for 7 years attended in court in this moment, seeking an opportunity to explain his proposals. For aught he knows of half the world, of all the countries he has to discover, and he knows enough. All men around him know enough to see that his domain may be too perpetually indeed. Papal bull. The time is not occupied merely in shows and banquets. There are no difficulty how about the funds for the second expedition. Directions were given that it might be set forward as quickly as possible and on an opposing scale, for it was feared at the court that King John of Portugal, the successful revival of Spain thus far in maritime adventure, might anticipate further discovery. The sovereign at once sent an embassy to the Pope, not simply to announce the discovery, but to obtain from him to decree confirming similar discoveries in the same direction. There was at least one precedent for such action. A former pope has granted to Portugal all the land it might discover in Africa, south of Cape Vazador. The Spanish crown had acceded by treaty to this arrangement. Fernand and Isabella could now refer to his president in asking for a grant to them of their discoveries on the western side of the Atlantic. The Pope now resigning was Alexander II. He was not long filled the papal chair. He was an ambitious and prudent sovereign, a native of Spain, and although he would gladly have pleased the King of Portugal, he was with respect and request made to them. The Pope expressed his joy at the hopes throughout for the conversation of the Hittite, which the Spanish sovereign had expressed, as Columbus had always done, and so prompt were the Spanish request. So ready the Pope answer that the early in May 3, 1493, a papal bull was issued to meet the wishes of Spain. The bull determined for Spain and for Portugal that all discoveries made west of Mediterranean line 100 leagues west of the Arrows should belong to Spain. All discovery east of that line should belong to Portugal. No reference was made to other maritime powers, and it does not seem to have been supposed to other states had any right in such matters. The line thus arranged for two nations was changed by their own agreement in 1494 for a north and south line 350 leagues west in the Cape de Verde Islands. The difference between the two lines were not supposed to be important. New Department of Administration for colonization. It was to be a large and generous scale to take out 1,000 men. For this was the first plan. So the number afterward the is increase of 1500 to give efficiency to all the measures of colonization. What we should call a new department of administration was formed, and at the head of the was placed at John Rodrigo de Fonsa. Fonsa held this high and responsible position for 30 years. He early conceived a great dislike of Columbus, who was in some transactions before this expedition sailed, appealing to the sovereign to set aside a decision of Ponce's and succeeded. For all the period while he managed the Indian affair of Spain, Ponce kept his own interest in sight more closely than those of Spain or of the colonist, and not Columbus only, but every other official of Spain in the West Indies had reason to regret the appointment.
One of the primary objectives of Columbus' second voyage was to establish permanent settlements in the newly discovered lands. After destruction of La Navidad, Columbus sailed towards the northern coast of Hispaniola and established the settlement of La Isabela in December 1493, named after a Spanish queen. Columbus spent some time exploring the interior of island for gold and establishing new colonies. However, the settlement did not last long due to its poor placement. Columbus also stabilized the fortress of Santo Tomas on the island of Spinola as a strategic military outpost. It played a crucial role in securing Spanish control over the island and protecting Spanish interests in the region. Columbus and his crew initially had friendly interactions with indigenous Taino people of Caribbean islands. Columbus had interactions with indigenous people on the island of Santa Cruz and Guadeloupe, where, on the account of a fleet member, they had rescued a Taino woman and a boy with a group of at least 20 women that the Caribs had been keeping as a sex slaves. However, as Columbus stabilized settlements and began to assert control over the land, conflicts arose with the native people. By 1494, Columbus shared his viceroyship with other military officer Margaret, ordering him to prioritize Christianizing the natives. Instead, they exploited the natives by beating, raping, and enslaving them. Columbus also participated in enslaving the indigenous. He enslaved around 1,500 Arawaks who rebelled against the oppression colonists. He shipped 1,500 of these to Spain as slaves. 40% died en route. During his brief reign, Columbus executed Spanish colonists for minor crimes and well used dismemberment as another form of punishment. By the end of 1494, disease and famine had claimed two-thirds of the Spanish settlers. At Isabella, there was a grumbling against the admiral, in which Benedictine Father Boyle and other priests joined. There was complaint that the amount of gold was vastly exaggerated, of unhealthy environment, and poor treatment of natives by the hands of Commander Pedro Margaret. To investigate the matter, Monarch decided to send Juan de Udo as a special commissioner to investigate and report. He arrived at Isabella in October 1495 with limited provisions while the Columbus was away for exploring the island. As supplies from Spain dwindled, Columbus decided to return to Spain to ask for more help in stabilizing the colony. The duo departed La Isabela on 10th March 1496 with two ships, one for Juan de Udo and one for Columbus himself, and reached Spain on 11th June 1496, marking the end of his second voyage. The second voyage of Columbus to New World had a profound impact on history. It is considered to be the start of the Columbian Exchange, which saw a mass exchange of diseases, plants, and animals between New and Old World. It paved the way for further exploration and colonization and laid the foundation for Spanish Empire's expansion in the America and colonization in the Caribbean. Negative consequences for the indigenous people included forced labor, disease, and cultural destruction. One of the primary objectives of Columbus' second voyage was to establish permanent settlements in the newly discovered lands. After destruction of La Navidad, Columbus sailed towards the northern coast of Hispaniola and established the settlement of La Isabela in December 1493, named after a Spanish queen. Columbus spent some time exploring the interior of Ireland for gold and stabilizing new colony. However, the settlement did not last long due to its poor placement. Columbus also stabilized the fortress of Santo Tomas on the island of Hispaniola as a strategic military outpost. It played a crucial role in securing Spanish control over the island and protecting Spanish interests in the region. Columbus and his crew initially had friendly interactions with indigenous Taino people of Caribbean islands, where they indulged in exchanging goods. Another interaction that Columbus had with indigenous people were on the island of Santa Cruz and Guadeloupe, where, according to the account of a fleet member, they had rescued a Taino woman and boy with a group of at least 20 women that Caribs had been keeping as sex slaves. However, as Columbus established settlements and began to assert control over the land, conflicts arose with native people. By 1494, Columbus shared his viceroyship with another military officer, Margaret, ordering him to prioritize Christianizing the natives, but instead they exploited the natives by beating, raping, and enslaving them. Columbus also participated in enslaving the indigenous people, who enslaved around 1,500 Arawaks, who rebelled against the oppression and colonists. He shipped 1,500 of these to Spain as slaves. 40% died on en route. During his brief prison, Columbus executed Spanish colonists for minor crimes and used dismemberment as another form of punishment. By the end of 1494, disease and famine had claimed two-thirds of the Spanish settlers.
The significance of Columbus' first and second voyages extends beyond their immediate historical context, shaping the development of world civilizations and influencing the trajectory of human progress. Columbus' voyages represent a watershed moment in world history, marking the beginning of the age of exploration and globalization of the world. They symbolize the spirit of adventure, curiosity, and discovery that has fueled human exploration and expansion throughout the ages. Despite controversy and criticism surrounding Columbus' action and legacy, his voyages remain deeply ingrained in cultural memory and collective consciousness of Western civilization. Columbus Day, celebrated in many countries, commemorates his arrival in the Americas and serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of human societies and the enduring legacy of exploration and discovery. The legacy of Columbus' voyages continues to be debated and re-evaluated in the modern world as scholars, activists, and indigenous communities challenge traditional narratives and seek to address the legacies of colonization, imperialism, and exploitation. The commemoration of Columbus' voyages raises questions about identity, representation. Nevertheless, Columbus' voyages had far reaching consequences that extended beyond his own lifetime. His discoveries sparked a wave of European exploration, conquest, and colonization in the Americas, leading to the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. The Columbian Exchange, named after Columbus, facilitated the global diffusion of crops, animals, diseases, technologies, and cultures, profoundly shaping the course of world history. In conclusion, Christopher Columbus' voyages represent a pivotal moment in human history, marking the beginning of the age of exploration and the interconnectedness of the world. While his expeditions brought about significant geopolitical, economic, and cultural changes, they also had enduring consequences for the indigenous people of the Americas. Today, Columbus' legacy continues to be re examined and interpreted in the light of contemporary perspectives on imperialism, colonization, and the impact of European expansion on indigenous societies.